My ex said he'd only help with our kids if I slept with him. So I refused. I, 27F, separated from my kid's dad, 30M, almost 5 years ago after being together nearly 10 years. We have 2 kids, 9M and 5F. We started dating when I was just 17 and he was 20. For a long time, he was my entire world. We grew up together, moved into our first apartment together, and navigated the terrifying reality of becoming parents to a child with special needs when we were barely into our 20s. Our son, 9M, is autistic and requires a level of patience and routine that most people can't even begin to fathom. Our daughter, 5F, is a firecracker, full of energy and constant questions. For most of those 5 years after the breakup, we had a 50-50 custody schedule that worked remarkably well. I had the kids Friday afternoon through Tuesday morning, and he had them Tuesday afternoon through Friday morning. We were the golden standard for co-parenting. We attended school meetings together, we split the cost of extracurriculars without a fight, and we generally respected each other's boundaries. I thought we had escaped the typical toxicity that usually follows a decade-long relationship ending. I was wrong. At the beginning of 2025, my life hit a wall. It started with a health scare that led to a massive wave of clinical depression. I couldn't get out of bed. I lost my job because I couldn't stop crying in the break room. My apartment became a disaster zone. I wasn't the mother my kids deserved. I knew it, and their dad knew it. He stepped up. I will never take that away from him. He saw I was drowning and suggested he take temporary full custody while I worked on getting my life together. I didn't fight him. I loved my kids too much to let them stay in a house where the air felt heavy with my sadness. I moved into a smaller, cheaper place and spent months in therapy and working odd jobs to stay afloat. During that time, I saw the kids every other weekend, but he was the primary caregiver. He was the one doing the school runs, the therapy appointments, and the bedtime routines for a child who melts down if his pajamas aren't the right texture. During this period, my son's supplemental security income, SSI, finally came through after years of appeals. Because I had been the primary parent for so long, I was the original payee. But since the kids were now with him full-time, we had to transfer that status to him. It was a bureaucratic nightmare. At the same time, I was expecting a tax refund of about $3,000. In April 2025, a lump sum of $2,900 hit my bank account. I didn't even look at the description. I saw the amount, assumed it was my tax refund, and immediately used it to pay back rent, fix my car, and buy groceries. It wasn't until weeks later, when their dad asked about the SSI back pay, that I realized I had spent the money meant for my son's future needs. I felt sick. I told him immediately. He was furious. He called me a thief, a deadbeat, and said I was the reason he couldn't afford a better specialized tutor for our son. I took the abuse because I felt I deserved it. I promised to pay him back every cent as soon as I was back on my feet. By the end of 2025, I had done the work. I had a stable, high-paying job in logistics. I had a clean, 2-bedroom apartment. I was healthy, clear-headed, and desperate to have my kids back in my daily life. He agreed that he couldn't keep doing the full-time thing alone, he was burnt out. We agreed to go back to our old 50-50 schedule starting in January 2026. As part of the reintegration, he sat me down with a spreadsheet. He demanded $1,000 from my 2026 tax refund to start paying off the SSI back pay. I agreed. He also agreed that since we were sharing the kids again, we would split the monthly $900 SSI payment. $450 for him, $450 for me. This seemed fair. This seemed like we were finally getting back to that golden standard. But as soon as the calendar flipped to 2026, the mask started to slip. I noticed he was only transferring me $400 a month. When I asked him about the other $50, he told me that he was the primary payee and that the extra $50 was his administrative fee for dealing with the Social Security Administration. It felt petty, but I didn't want to start a war, so I swallowed my pride and said nothing. Then came the bigger blow. Because he makes significantly more money than I do, and he is listed as the primary household for the SSI, the SSA flagged the account for an income review. There is a very high probability that our son will lose his benefits entirely because of his dad's salary. If that happens, I don't just lose $450, I lose the ability to pay for the specialized sensory equipment and the weighted blankets my son needs at my house. When my tax refund hit last week, it was smaller than I expected. With the SSI at risk, I realized that giving him the full $1,000 would leave me with zero savings if the benefits were cut. I called him and tried to be rational. I can give you $500 now, I said. But I need to hold on to the rest until we hear back from the SSA. If the check stops coming, I need that money for the kids' needs. The explosion was immediate. He called me every name in the book. He told me I was a liar, that I was robbing him again, and that I was re-traumatizing him by going back on my word. He ended the call by saying, "Fine. If you want to act like a stranger, I'll treat you like one. Don't expect any more help." The help he referred to was the Tuesday morning transition. For years, because my job starts at 7:30 a.m., he has picked the kids up from my office parking lot and driven them to school. It's a 15-minute detour for him, but it's the only way I can keep my job. For 3 days, he ignored my texts. On Sunday night, I sent a desperate message, "Please, are you picking them up Tuesday? I can't leave work once I've clocked in. I'm sorry about the money, I'm just scared about the SSI." He didn't reply until Monday morning. His text was chillingly calm. "I've been thinking about it," he wrote. "You've disrespected me a lot lately. You spent the money, you broke your word, and you act like I'm the bad guy. I don't feel like doing favors for someone who treats me like a bank. But I'm willing to overlook the $500 debt and keep the school runs going if you come over Friday night. I'll get a sitter. We can have the house to ourselves. You can remind me why I liked you for 10 years. If you do that, we're even." I stared at my phone for 10 minutes. I felt a cold sweat break out on my neck. He wasn't asking for a date. He was asking for a transaction. He was explicitly saying that my bodily autonomy was worth exactly $500 and the convenience of a school bus run. In a moment of pure, unadulterated panic, the kind where your chest feels like it's being crushed, I typed, "Okay." I felt like I had no choice. If I lose this job, I lose the kids again. If the kids don't get to school, he'll use it against me in court. I sent him the $500 I did have immediately via Venmo, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the money plus the promise would make him act like a human being. Monday night was a blur. I looked at my kids while they were eating dinner, and I felt like a shell of a person. My son was humming to himself, lining up his toy cars, and my daughter was telling me about a drawing she made. I realized that if I went through with this, I was teaching my daughter that women are commodities. I was teaching my son that men can buy cooperation with coercion. I couldn't do it. On Tuesday morning, I sent him a text. "I can't do Friday. It's not right. It's not healthy for us or the kids. I will pay you the other $500 as soon as I can, but I'm not sleeping with you to fix a co-parenting issue." He didn't respond. He just didn't show up. I was at my desk, watching the clock tick toward 8 a.m. My kids were sitting in the break room with their tablets. 8:05, 8:10. My heart was pounding so hard I thought my coworkers could hear it. I had to go to my boss, a woman I deeply respect, and tell her I had an emergency and needed to leave. I had to pack the kids into the car, drive them to school late, and sign them in at the front office while the receptionist gave me a judging look. When I got back to work, I had a message from him. "I warned you. I don't care what happens to you anymore. You think you're so principled? Good luck getting them to school next week. And don't bother asking for the SSI money this month. I'm keeping it to cover the disrespect tax. See you in court when you're fired and can't support them." I've spent the last few hours crying in my car during my lunch break. I feel like I'm back in 2025, falling apart, but this time it isn't depression, it's him. He's systematically removing every support beam I have because I won't sleep with him. He's already started the smear campaign. My former mother-in-law, who I used to be very close with, sent me a scathing text saying she's disappointed that I'm still manipulating her son and refusing to pay back the money I stole from his grandson. She has no idea about the Friday night proposition. To the outside world, he's the hardworking father being jerked around by an unstable ex-wife. To me, he's a man holding my life hostage. I am terrified. I have no family in this state. My friends are all mutual friends who don't want to get involved in the drama. I am standing on the edge of a cliff, and the person who is supposed to be holding my hand is trying to push me off because I wouldn't let him own me. I keep asking myself, was it worth it? If I had just gone over there for a few hours on Friday, would my life be stable right now? Would the kids be in school on time? Would my job be safe? Am I being dramatic for calling this coercion? He says it was an offer to reconnect, but we both know what it was. It was a power play. I'm sitting here with $500 missing, a boss who is losing patience, and a son whose world depends on a routine that his own father is willing to shatter just to punish me. I don't know what to do next. I feel like if I tell anyone the truth, he'll just call me a liar and point to my breakdown last year as proof that I'm not mentally sound. Am I the a-hole for not just sleeping with him to keep the peace? Am I the one making things hard for my kids by standing my ground? Update. A lot has happened since I made that post. I read through the comments over and over for a couple of days. The one thing that came up again and again was that I needed to stop handling this informally and start protecting myself legally. At first I hesitated because court has always been the nuclear option between us. For years we avoided it by cooperating. But the situation stopped being cooperative the moment he started tying basic parenting responsibilities to sex. By the end of that week the Tuesday school situation happened again. He didn't show up for the pickup from my job, and he didn't respond to messages until hours later. The kids were late to school again and my supervisor pulled me aside afterward to ask what was going on. I explained that childcare had fallen through unexpectedly and that I was working on resolving it. She was understanding in the moment, but it was clear that if it kept happening it would become a real issue. That same afternoon I contacted a family law attorney. I had never spoken to one before and didn't even know what to ask. The consultation itself was uncomfortable because I had to explain everything from the SSI situation to the messages about sleeping with him. The attorney asked if I still had those messages. I did. I had screenshots of the conversation where he offered to overlook the debt if I came over Friday night. I also had the follow-up message where he said he wouldn't help with the kids anymore because I refused. Once she read them, her tone changed. Up until that point she had been asking neutral questions, but after seeing the text she told me the situation had crossed into coercion territory and that I needed to stop negotiating with him privately. She explained that withholding childcare responsibilities to pressure a co-parent into sex was something courts take seriously. She also told me the SSI money technically belongs to the child, not either parent, and using it as leverage in a personal dispute could become another issue if a judge looked at it. The first thing she advised was documenting everything. Not just the proposition but the missed pickups, the money transfers, the arguments about SSI, and the messages where he threatened to stop helping unless I slept with him. She also recommended filing for a formal custody order and requesting that communication go through a parenting app so nothing could be deleted or twisted later. I filed the paperwork the following week. He found out faster than I expected. Apparently the court documents were delivered to his house on a Tuesday afternoon. Within an hour my phone started lighting up with calls from him, which I ignored because my attorney had already warned me not to engage. The messages that followed were angry at first, accusing me of escalating things and trying to ruin his life. Then the tone shifted into something else entirely. He started claiming the texts were jokes and that I was twisting them because I regretted agreeing in the first place. That message thread ended with him saying he was going to tell the court I was unstable again and that my episode last year proved I couldn't be trusted with the kids full time. I forwarded everything to my attorney. Things got messy after that. Within a few days his mother contacted me again. This time it wasn't just disappointment. She accused me of trying to take the kids away from her son out of spite. She repeated the story about the SSI back pay and the money I spent in 2025 as proof that I was irresponsible. At that point I realized he had already started building a narrative where I was the unreliable parent who stole money and was now retaliating because he refused to help me financially. What he didn't tell her was the part where he demanded sex to continue helping with school pickups. I didn't respond to her messages. My attorney told me to stop engaging with anyone connected to him unless it was directly about the kids and documented. The next issue came from the SSI situation itself. When we returned to the 50-50 schedule in January, he never updated the Social Security office about the custody change. He continued receiving the full payment while only transferring part of it to me. According to my lawyer, that arrangement was questionable because the benefit is meant to support the child in whichever household they are staying in. She recommended contacting the Social Security office to inform them of the custody arrangement and ask how the payments should actually be handled. That phone call triggered its own chain reaction. A few weeks later both of us received letters requesting updated information about our son's living arrangements and household income. When he realized I had contacted them, he was furious. The next message from him said I had messed with federal benefits out of jealousy and that if the payments stopped it would be my fault. What happened next surprised both of us. The review determined that because custody was shared evenly, he shouldn't have been reporting himself as the sole household responsible for the child's expenses. They asked for documentation of the custody schedule and began re-evaluating who should be listed as the representative payee. That process is still ongoing, but it immediately created tension on his side because it meant the monthly money he had been receiving might change. While all of that was happening, the custody case moved forward. The court scheduled a temporary hearing to address the immediate issues until a full custody evaluation could happen. My attorney submitted the text messages along with a timeline of the events leading up to the filing. When he saw that evidence included in the paperwork, he changed tactics again. Instead of denying the messages outright, he started saying they were taken out of context and that we had been discussing reconnecting as adults after years apart. According to him, I agreed and then decided to accuse him when I changed my mind. He also claimed the missed school pickups were misunderstandings caused by poor communication. The judge didn't seem convinced. At the temporary hearing, the focus stayed mostly on logistics for the kids. The judge ordered that until the case was resolved, the existing 50-50 schedule would remain in place, but that exchanges would happen directly at the school rather than at my workplace. That change alone removed the situation where I depended on him to pick the kids up from my job. The court also required all communication to go through a co-parenting app so there would be a clear record moving forward. Another part of the order addressed the SSI money. The judge didn't make a final ruling about it but did state that neither parent was allowed to withhold funds meant for the child as punishment or leverage. Both of us were instructed to keep records of how the money was being used for our son's needs until the Social Security review finished. He was visibly angry when the hearing ended. Over the next few weeks the drama escalated outside the courtroom. Mutual friends started contacting me saying he had been telling people I was dragging him through court because I was bitter about the breakup years ago. The story going around was that I couldn't handle him moving on and that I was trying to destroy his reputation. At the same time he began pushing harder on the narrative that I was mentally unstable. He brought up the depression episode from 2025 repeatedly, framing it as evidence that I could relapse at any moment. My attorney expected that tactic and had already gathered documentation showing I completed treatment, maintained steady employment, and had stable housing since then. The real turning point came when his own messages started contradicting his claims. Because communication was now going through the parenting app, every conversation was automatically saved. A few weeks into using it he slipped back into the same pattern as before. During an argument about scheduling he wrote a message saying that if I had kept my promise that Friday, none of this would be happening. That line ended up being important. My attorney included it in the next filing as further evidence that the earlier messages weren't jokes or misunderstandings. It showed that even weeks later he was still referencing the same demand. Around that time another issue surfaced involving the SSI payments. The Social Security office requested clarification about how the money had been used while he was the representative payee. From what I understand, this is a routine part of their review process. They ask for receipts or records showing the funds were spent on the child's needs. Apparently he didn't have much documentation. The monthly benefit had been coming into his account for nearly a year, and when they asked how it was used he couldn't provide clear records beyond basic household expenses. That alone wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but it became one when the agency learned he had been sending partial amounts to me while still reporting himself as the sole caretaker. The review is still in progress, but the last update we received indicated they are considering appointing a different payee or splitting responsibility between households. He blamed that entirely on me. Another argument broke out through the app where he said I had sabotaged the benefits by involving the government in something that should have stayed between us. My attorney responded to that message directly through the app, reminding him that the payments legally belong to our son and that transparency is required. Since then his communication has become much shorter and more cautious. As for the kids, the new exchange arrangement through the school has actually made things calmer for them. They move between houses without the tension that used to happen during parking lot handoffs or rushed transitions. Teachers are aware of the schedule now, which helps keep everything consistent. My son's routines are stable again and the school hasn't reported any issues since the change. My daughter seems mostly unaffected by the legal drama because we've kept those conversations away from both of them. The custody case itself is still ongoing, and there will likely be another hearing later this year once the evaluation process is finished. For now the temporary order remains in place and the court will review how well both of us follow it. The biggest difference is that the power dynamic he relied on before is gone. He can't threaten to stop helping with school pickups because exchanges are handled through the school. He can't erase messages because the app records everything. And he can't quietly control the SSI money while presenting himself as the sole parent responsible for our son. That doesn't mean the situation is peaceful. There's still a lot of tension, especially now that legal oversight is involved. But the chaos that started with that Friday night demand isn't controlling my life anymore. For anyone wondering whether I regret refusing him, the answer is no.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Daily Tales Update for more such stories.